Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are talking to Afarin Bellisario. And as she terms it, she is a bridge between East and West, past and future. She lived through the Iranian Revolution and has mastered the culture of innovation in America. Upon receiving a PhD and an MBA from MIT, Afarin spent most of her career in the high-tech world, but writing has always been a passion of hers. Afarin writes about what happens to people and societies when tradition and modernity collide. Her new book, Silenced Whispers, that Jennifer and I are both holding up, showcases that collision vividly. Silenced Whispers tells the story of an Iranian woman's battle for freedom, hers and her country's, and love amid profound social change and imperial power grabs. Portraying life in Iran at the dawn of the 20th century, the book is inspired by her upbringing in an Azeri family in Tehran and her Russian great-grandfather. Afarin, we are so excited to talk to you and to talk about your book. Thank you so much. Welcome to Madness Cafe.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It's good to be with you guys or gals. So yes, it's great to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you and your audience about the book and whatever else that you want to ask.
Awesome.
Well, I would love to start with learning a little bit about your childhood, what it was like to grow up in Iran.
Well, I mean, my childhood, it was lots of fun. I have I grew up as an only child, but I had lots of cousins, and both my parents had extended families, so it was fun. And you don't really, as a child, you accept the world as it comes to you. So I never questioned why is this and why is that, and I was an avid reader. I would read everything insight from newspapers to trashy novels to great works of literature. So I read everything. So it was fun. But as I grew up, you see more and more, not within, I mean, differences within the same family. There are parts, some members of the family who are very religious and they cover their faces when, I don't know, when a cat passes by, because cat could be male. And then there were people like, my aunts and my mother who would wear mini skirts, and they would go to the beaches and have fun. So you sort of grew up with these changes, but you accept them as a child. It's not, anything that you see is sort of like it is what it is, and it isn't until later on in my youth, and then later on when the revolution happens, when you think about the past, that you kind of see, oh wow, this was sort of there. I mean, this was still a transitional society, if you will, and part of society where very traditional is part of it weren't. So I hope that I answered your question.
It did, but could you tell us a little bit about that revolution?
Well, the Iranian Revolution actually happened when I was in the United States. I was a student in the US in 1979. But as I was, in the 70s were very traumatic years in Iran. In University of Tehran was always in strike. There was strikes about the bus, about the strike about this and that. And there were a lot of, tumultuous things that were happening in the society. So, everybody felt that, okay, something got to happen. But it wasn't really until late 70s when everything became obvious that the regime can't stand and it has to go, and people wanted to have more freedom and more. Well, they never got it, but at least the aspiration of a democracy and a republic was in Iran. Sort of people weren't really happy with the status quo anymore. Because there was a lot of censorship in Iran in the 60s and 70s, and everybody knew that. But the censorship became worse and worse as years went by. And in the 60s, there was a modicum of freedom for, well, there was freedom for whatever you want to wear and whatever you want to do. But in the press and in the, there was this thing that you would, of course, you don't criticize the regime of the Shah, but also you could basically say something where why is there's this and there's that and there's corruption. But as the years went by, especially in the 70s, things got much worse. So people were not really able to express themselves. And that kind of like made the society break up. But after in times like a revolution is where you see a lot of voices come out, this and that and the other. And the Islamists, after the hostage situation, hostage crisis, and that they took the Americans hostage for, I don't know, 444 days, whatever it was.
In 1979, I believe, right?
Yes, 1979 until 1981, January of 81. So that was when they, basically, whether or not, a lot of people believe that it was staged by the Islamists for getting rid of the liberals, whatever they were in Iran, and take over as a, as a theocratic, autocratic, Islamic republic.
So you brought up the press, and that, you could say some things, but not others. And you mentioned, and I don't remember if it was on your website that you mentioned this, or if it was in one of the interviews that you had given, but you mentioned that at the age of 14, I don't know if it was your first piece, but you were writing and publishing and, that sort of thing. How was it possible that at 14 you were able to be published at that time? I mean, was society in Iran at that point much looser, and or was it that you were not necessarily writing about things that the government would be on the lookout for?
Sure. I mean, as a used to, I wasn't writing anything political at the age of 14. I was writing about women's issues.
Well, that can be political.
Well, it always is political, but and I worked for both major news organization in Iran, Kayhan and Etalat, and they both had some internal censorship. So you write something, you give it to the editor, and editor would take out things that might not pass muster. And again, as I said, it was not like. I wrote about young people and universities and university outside and inside. So it wasn't overtly political. So it wasn't anything that would, and then I would do some translations of some, I don't know, young love and romance stories, and they were all very non-political. When I worked for, I did publish a few short stories in more of a literally magazines, and they were sort of like, you aspire for freedom and things like that. But again, you learn how to sort of wrap everything in sort of like I don't know, symbolic way or whatever. So it was, you learn how to live with this system. But system, as I said, when I, in the early 70s, it was much better. Then it became worse and worse as we went on. So again, I wasn't a political writer. There were a few, but I mean, there were a lot of things that you could still write.
Okay.
That's really interesting because I do see your piece now as a political piece,
Yes.
and it's a beautiful book.
So good.
How did you
So good.
decide to write this story, Silence Whispers?
Well, there are many things. One of them was that as you grow a little, more comfortable in. Well, I mean, when I was in the United States when the revolution happened, so I was my decision not to go back because I knew that I can't live with. I have a big mouth. I mean, I always get to the
Join us.
trouble.
We do
Yep.
too.
So I get to the edge of trouble, but with the Islamic Republic, I don't think that I could have even gotten, anywhere. So my decision was that, okay, so let's just stay here and make a living here. And of course, writing wasn't difficult, but writing in a language that wasn't mine yet at that
Mhm.
point in time was. And so I was also a talented engineer and I could make a living. And that's what I did. And I worked for corporate America and I did a lot of good work in the high tech business. As I grew a little older and my kids went to school and I became an empty nester, then there was a time in my life I said, well, I got to think about a lot of things in life, because the idea of thinking about human condition and Iranian
Mhm.
situation and everything else was still in my mind. It was just, as the rest of us are, I was just too busy paying the mortgage and and
Yep.
living to kind of think about anything beyond, beyond whatever, that was in front of me. And then, but you start thinking about the world, and the question of Iran has always been in my mind. What happened? What is it
Mhm.
that happened that we became what we became? And there's a lot of also there's still a lot of things boiling up in Iran. Still,
Mhm.
nothing is settled, of course. And then there's also the fact that I always worked in the bleeding edge of technology. I was dealing with cell phones when they were when they were but nothing but the vaporware. I don't know whether you know the term, but in the high tech world, a lot of times people talk about things that don't exist, but it's just exists in the people's mind. So we call them vaporware. So they're
Mhm.
not they're not product yet, but so I saw that, for example, this thing that the things that we were so gung ho about, especially cell phones, becoming not the glue to the society as we thought,
Yep.
but becoming less, more and more things that make people apart. So somehow in my mind, the two come together, and the idea of what happens in a society when it's introduced, when it's confronted with the rapidly, changing world, what happens to that? And of course, you can always write a nonfiction, but it's not fun. I wanted to write something more with more heart. And believe it or not, one morning I woke up and I had Gohar in my mind and I had her story in my mind. And I said, I'm going to write it. And I wrote it. And then, then I went back and became humble and got a teacher, not a teacher, but a mentor and an editor that helped me with, I mean, you write this story, but this story is like a hanger. The story itself is fun, but there's a lot of things that go into the writing of a novel. And I wanted it to be something that I'm proud of. So I learned from editors and mentors, and it became the story that became.
Well, I sure hope that you're proud of it because it is such a good book. I mean, the characters are so beautifully written
Yes.
and they're all so different. And the way that the characters and the relationships are situated against the backdrop of, the revolution and the clash between old world and modernity and new technologies coming through and all of that clashing and all of the power grabs because of all of the riches of Iran. It's just so, oh, it's so good. It's just so good. How long, and this is a question that always
Yeah,
boggles my mind, but how long did it take you from, the morning that you said the story just came to you and you wrote it and there it is, and Gohar came to you, to the point where you're like, this is the final product, now it's going to be put into print? How long did that process take?
Oh, a long time. And I tell you the process that we went to. So the story was, I started in late 2017. This is before COVID. And this a skeleton was written by the 2018. So from that point on, I had one person who helped me. And that point, my goal was to get it to a point where an agent takes it up and then we work with some editors. And I put together some, I don't know, material, and I went to Writers Digest conference, the big conference in New York. And believe it or not, I talked to 5 agents, and 5 agents and sent me manuscript. Now, the problem was that it's believe me. So, but what happened was that I came back, and this was, I don't know, October of 2019.
Oh,
At the time I cleaned it up to send the manuscript to these ladies and one gentleman, COVID had happened. And
oh.
COVID changed a lot of things. So 5 people except, wanted my manuscript. None sent me anything, not even a rejection letter. So early 2020, with the COVID beating on our necks, that was when I decided that, well, I really can't wait for the process, so I want to make it work. I want to do, I want to get a professional editor, and those characters that you pointed it out, it's all, it was me, but it was hidden in me. And I have to give my editor and mentor, Ellie Rubin, a big applause at this point, because she helped me bring out these characters to life. And one of the things that she said is that, think about yourself, think about the people that you know. It's maybe it was all in my mind, but she was really the person who helped me bring everybody to life. And I owe her, and she's definitely had done a great job. And I'm very proud of the book, as you pointed it out. I want everybody to read it. It's not that I want to sell a lot of books, but I want everybody to read it because it's my piece for the world, so to speak.
Well, it's such a broad story, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I learned a lot about Iran and Iran's history reading this book. I think I've sort of always been sort of vaguely aware that various superpowers kind of had their hands in there and digging around and messing with stuff and all the things, but it didn't occur to me that a lot of this started maybe around the time of World War I, or even maybe before that. Like, it just didn't occur to me. And we aren't taught really anything about Iran's history growing up. I mean, the little bit that we know is from watching the news and what little bit they'll tell us in the news, or in situations like mine and Jennifer's, where we get to talk to authors like you who've written amazing books, and and like Arash Azizi.
We both had the same idea.
I know, exactly. Who wrote,
He wrote a very good book as well. Yes.
yeah, and it's an amazing book. And then, so it's through this sort of thing, through opening ourselves up to other people's stories, that we learn. Yes, that's a great reason to pick up this book, but it really is it's an amazing story, and there's lots of there's just so much going on, and I don't want to give anything away, but I just want to talk about it so bad. But I'm trying really hard not to give anything away. But the character of Gohar, oh my God, I love her. I mean, she's strong, and she's resilient, and she's compassionate, and it just makes me think about some version of the women's movement that Arash Azizi was talking about in his book. Some version of that has always, it seems, been happening in Iran. And you give us a glimpse of that through the characters in Silenced Whispers.
I hope so, and that was the whole point. That I mean, nobody's gonna go and read about the history of Iran, but people, real people, not or people that are based on real characteristic of the people, they can be very compelling, and I think Gohar is a compelling character because she doesn't have any superpower. She goes into her heart and she brings out the resilience. I mean, as she says that there's a one point between her and Aslan, that fear is no excuse for being a coward. You're brave when you accept the fear and you act on it. And that's what Gohar is. That's what Gohar wants to do. And I'm happy that you like her characters and other characters in the story, because they really are drawn upon, like, my experience with people. Again, I started my writing life being a journalist, and as a journalist, you always think about okay, people. Okay, this is the story of people, and have an obligation to bring that up. And now, if that some of those could be characters that you give them a fictional name, a fictional character, but they have the roots in different characters that live in Iran, lived in Iran. And I think it's a good companion to Iran's book, because this talks about women who came before. There were, women's society, inspirational women who opened the first schools in Iran, who fought for it. And that goes back, 150 years back, that they kind of started this foundation of fighting for their life, their human rights, basically, because they had many education has always been big for Iranian women. So my first grade, I went to a school in the south of Tehran, in very, very poor section of Tehran, and there were a lot of girls there whose parents didn't know how to read and write, but you could see the mother taking the hands of a child, bringing them to school, whether it's a boy or a girl, so say, you learn, So it's the idea of learning and education,
Based on that part, I want to read something in the book. This is perhaps one of my favorite. It's just a small little paragraph, but this is after Gohar is getting ready to leave her home that she was raised in as a child. And you say, a female photographer took pictures documenting the union of Gohar at 14 with the most prominent citizen of the noble city, 40 years her senior. He was rich, good-natured, and a member of a powerful tribe, but he was no Prince Charming. That was like, whoa! It sets up such a good story because it's like the plight of all women in a way. Tell us about that a little bit, about this no Prince Charming.
Yes, I mean, Go Ahead really doesn't have a lot of choices, and this is probably the best. And she doesn't have anything to say about the marriage.
Mhm.
Marriages were all arranged, So you were a girl, you were 9 years old, you were supposed to get married. Go Ahead is already old by the time
At
she gets it
14.
done.
Mm.
She's 14. Wow, she's gonna be spinster soon. So you know, so she's all she's very nervous about this marriage, so, because she had never even seen this guy. She doesn't know what does he look like. Maybe he looks like, maybe he has horns, maybe he has tails. She doesn't know. So in some sense, she knows that, okay, she's relieved that this guy is okay.
Right.
At the same time, she knows that it's not a Prince Charming, and
Mhm.
it's not that the man that she would have chosen for herself. But she's there. She gotta go with it. So it's just she doesn't have but that was the plight of most women in Iran, and still there are. I mean, it's still arranged marriages, not only in Iran, but I don't know, in India and other places in the East, it happening. A lot of women go through with it because they have no other choice. They don't have any way of making a living. They don't have any
Mhm.
way of living by themselves. Even if they could get a job, think of, they can't go out and get an apartment. So
No,
Mhm.
of course not.
there's a lot of societal things. Yes.
It's great because she does this marriage, she has this part of her heart where she wants to like do what's right, follow tradition, make her family proud, and yet there's this other part of her that wants to go off and do what she wants to do and see the world and have adventure and fall in love. And there were so many points in the book where Gohar was driven kind of by her own desires, traveling the streets, helping out people. And I was
Mhm.
on pins and needles going, oh no, she's going to get caught. And I was always worried about her safety through the
Mhm.
entire book. What was going to happen? I think that as a writer, you did a fantastic job of getting that suspense, and also
Yes.
because we cared about her.
Mhm.
Yes. Thank
We
you.
didn't
Mhm.
want her to get hurt, but we
Thank
also
Mhm.
you.
wanted her to pursue her dreams, but we didn't
Right.
want what it, and it shows the plight of, I think, women around the world, no matter where they are, this desire to make your family proud, hold up tradition, but also this desire to be your
To be
own
your
true human.
Yeah, to make your own way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't really have a question, but I just love that so much about
Well,
the
thank
book.
you very much. I'm so glad that you liked it. And I'm so glad that you feel that sympathy with Gohar. So that's
Yeah.
great. That's
I was scared. I was like, oh no, don't get caught.
Yeah.
Especially when the first time she got caught on the streets by herself. I was
Oh,
like,
with
oh no.
the Luti who, yeah, oh,
yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to refer to different stuff, but I don't want to give anything away. Oh.
You give a little bit away because then people want to read it more.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. Okay, so speaking of women and the connections and being able to see yourself in Gohar, there's the other female characters in the book are so well written as well. And it's almost like there's somebody to represent everyone in the book, right? Like there's Noor and Kamar. Did I say
Yes.
her name? And
Yes.
Belkay? Did I say her?
Belqais. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Say her name again.
Belqais. Qais.
Belcase.
Bellace.
Yes.
Now
Bellace.
that
Okay.
is a complex character.
Yes. Oh, her development over the
Yeah.
course of the story.
Yes.
Oh, it's
Loved
so
it.
good. It
Loved
was
it.
so good. Okay. And so I read that this is supposed to be the first part in a trilogy. I
Yes.
have to ask because I was really dying to know,
Yes.
is Belclay going to be in the second and or third books that maybe continue to develop?
Yes. I mean,
Yes.
on the second one, I can tell you that she is. She's there.
Oh, good.
On
Okay.
the third one, I don't know, but
Okay.
we'll think about it. We'll think
That's
about
fair. That's fair.
But yes, and again, these different characters, they are kind of like representative of different characters that I have met and I have known in Iran. My grandfather had a big house, and his house is actually the house that it's not the same place, but it's very similar to the house of Saleh Mirza that you see later on in the book. So my grandfather had this big house, and there were a lot of people who always, there were always people coming in, people that I didn't even know who they were, some friends of family, some relative from who knows where. And, as a child, you listen to them, you listen to the way they talk, the way they dress, and you see them the way, and so these characters in this females and males, they're so different. They're all from different walks of life. So I kind of like memorized them. My husband is always say that I have a terrible I have a great memory, which is a great curse because I never forget anything. So growing up in that environment and seeing people coming and going, I picked up things about different characters. And there's also a more traditional society, and we have seen them everywhere. Try to conform everybody. So anybody who is slightly different doesn't really have a place in life. And Belkis is one of them. That's sort of like she's different, she's a little different. So, and then we see her story and the backstory a little bit. And yes, and she came out good. I'm happy to see that because you can't have everybody being the same. That would be a boring book.
That's right.
Mhm.
You mentioned, I forgot exactly how I was going to say this, but I'll reword the question. So I heard on one of the podcasts that you were on, you were talking about what happened back in Iran and also what happened in the book and the ominous signs that we pick up that are now happening in the United States as well. Could you talk about that parallel a little bit? Because that is near and dear to my heart, and I want people to wake up and see what is possible right now at this point in history in our country.
There are
So,
signs.
absolutely. I think the hindsight is 2020. It's always good to look back in the history. And when you see as I said, in the Tehran that I grew up, the North Tehran and South Tehran were very different because we had, I don't know, Ice Castle, which was a discotheque in different places in northern Tehran, close to Tajrish. But in the South Tehran, when my grandparents lived, the traditional parts of Tehran, women still wore chador. It was totally different. And again, as a child, you grow up, you don't see the chasm. But as again, this is the good eye of the reporting and the journalism. Sort of, I could start seeing, okay, in North Tehran, we have movies that just came out of Hollywood yesterday, or I don't know, 6 months ago, whatever. And in South Tehran, we have the so-called film Farsi, which is like dancing and totally different stories. And so the culture was very different. I mean, I have known women who worked in the North Tehran in big offices, shiny new offices, engineering, whatever. And then because her parents lived in the South Tehran, before they would go home, they would put a different, longer skirt on. They would put a scarf on. They would clean their faces from makeup. So they couldn't go home in the same clothing at the same time. If they had shown up with the scarf and the chador in the North Tehran office building, people would have, looked at them. They would not have respected them. So the difference was obvious, and it became worse and worse and worse because what happens is that people become very rigid in their thoughts, and that's what we're seeing today in America. It's not the difference between traditional, non-traditional, but there are people getting very, very rigid in their ideas. I am this, and I'm not that, and I live in this silo, and you live in that silo,
Yep.
and that scares the hell out of me. It's
Mhm.
Me
not
too.
Yep.
it's
Yep.
not that I would, if back in the days people in the north and south of Tehran would have started seeing a little bit. And
Yeah.
you know, back again when I was growing up, families still had, you know, families in north or south, they had familial bonds. You know, my
Yeah.
grandfather lived here, we lived in North Tehran near University of Tehran. So we still would see the spectrum of differences.
Right.
But people became further and further apart, especially as the city grow bigger. You know, you wouldn't see your family or maybe older relatives or whatever as much. It all changed. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, what I'm seeing today is that we have a lot of interconnectivity, but we don't have intimacy. We
Mm-mm.
don't have friendships. You know, we
Yeah.
have some. I have very good friends, very good, but more and more the new generation, the younger people, are in love with their little,
Yeah.
boxes, little
Yeah. Yeah. With,
smartphones.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
That what kind of society we will have, and of course part of this interconnectivity is manipulated by the commercial interest. You know, your eyes, you know, the sticky eyes, and they have algorithms that will determine what we will watch and what we will
Mhm.
see, and what we will spend our time in, and that is taking away our judgment. We're becoming more and more conformist to whatever company wants to show us. You know, we buy
Right.
Yes.
everything from Amazon.
Yeah.
We watch, I don't know, Netflix. You know, so it's very interesting because human mind likes to organize things in a different
Mhm.
way. But when you go to Netflix, and please do that next time you're watching Netflix or Prime, doesn't matter, either one of them. When you go there, you don't see anything organized. You just see things that they want, you know, maybe because they have been paid to do that, maybe
Mhm.
it's because that's what you want to see, but you see a whole bunch of different things that this is number one, this is number two, and then a whole bunch of things that almost look random, but it is not random. It is based
Yeah.
on an algorithm that says Afarin wants to watch this movies or should watch this movies. And
Mhm.
that's scary. That's scary to me because
She's
maybe we could
most
get a,
likely, she's most likely to buy this based on her past behavior or what she's
Yeah.
been watching, or even what she's been saying, because I don't know how many times I've said something near my cell phone and 20 minutes later I'm getting an ad for it.
Yeah.
because we just don't, and that scares me. That's
Yeah. Well, the sense of community is kind of messed up. You know, I mean, it's like it isn't the same. It isn't community as all of us in this together. And it's not far reaching. Like there was, again, it was another interview that you had done where you talked about in Iran, there's lots of extended family, and so your community is, there's all these people and multi generations, and but then you come to the US and it's not the same. Your community becomes much smaller. It becomes your nuclear family. It becomes you and your spouse and your kids and your kids' friends or your kids' friends' parents, and it kind of sinks down, right?
yeah,
And I think that that's happening so much, and then that accompanied with the whole algorithm thing and everybody becoming so divided,
The
it's
polarization.
the polarization. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
creating a perfect breeding ground for
Bingo.
the
Bingo.
things that you were saying that we need to look out for, like the signs that when you look back, those signs were there leading up to the revolution in Iran, and those things, we're seeing those things now.
Yes.
And if we look back, 10, 15, 20 years, we can see those things starting here.
Yes.
Just to sort of turn it back to the book a little bit, in the book, Gohar is creating her own community as well as being part of the greater community. Like she goes out, she's trying to help people in the community, like she's trying to help the poor people in the town, and she's trying to help feed people, and
she's
but
part of the revolution.
and she's part of the revolution, and she's
Mhm.
marching with the other women, but then she's also trying to build her own community with Salih Mirza and Noor, and like all of the people that are close to her.
And we haven't mentioned her love interest.
Yes.
Like that's an
Yeah.
important part of the story.
I know.
That's
But I feel
very,
like I can't talk
I
about
thought you
anything
did.
without giving stuff away. Ooh.
I mean, what's a good book without a little romance, right? We need some
Yeah.
romance in
Mhm.
there.
And okay, so I have to say, speaking of romance, there were two sentences, Afarin, that you wrote in the book that I underlined because I really love kind of the poetry of the way that you wrote them. And they're just two sentences and they're pages apart. But if you don't mind, can I just read them really quick? Okay,
Please.
so one of them is, it's on page 144, and you write, if he was her kismet, then there was no sin in their lovemaking. Had God not given them bodies to enjoy?
Oh,
I love that. I love that sentence. Just love it. And then on page 149, you wrote, life would be a rapturous poem to write, love a glorious song to compose.
Thank you.
My God, those two sentences are just so beautiful. And
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
this is
thank
such a
you.
good book.
Thank you. I try. I think the prose has to be nice. A book has to be more than just a story hang together. But yeah, I'm glad that you liked it. It's my pleasure to hear that. It's my pleasure to hear you reading it, and please read it to others to, spread the word.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
was there anything you wanted to tell our audience that we didn't ask you about, or was there any message from the book that you wanted to convey before we say goodbye?
And no, I think you ladies have said everything. I just want them to read. I just want them to take their own conclusions. This is a good story. I want them to enjoy it. I want them to read it and discuss it. Discuss it with each other. Discuss it. I think it's a lovely book for a book club because um, it's you can read it really quickly. It's not like something that you labor over or whatever, but at the same time there's a lot of issues there. So if you want to discuss it with each other in a book club, in an environment, I like that to be in the mind of people, and people disagree or whatever, but the conversation is what would be lovely to have.
Very,
Yeah.
very lovely.
Afarin, thank you so much for writing such a beautiful book and such a beautiful story. And I mean, I just have to tell people, the story is great, the writing is beautiful, the characters are great. This just
History.
history, there's literally something for everyone. Pick up the book.
Coach you on that? Something for
Yes.
everyone?
Yes, absolutely. Seriously. Read this book. It is so good, and it will keep your attention and keep you riveted till the very last
Yeah.
sentence.
It was also a real pleasure to talk to you today.
Yes.
Very much.
So
Thank you,
lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you. Same here. A lovely afternoon. And thank you so much for having me. And I love to come back and chat about the sequel or about Goa or whatever.
Yay! I can't wait. Oh,
That's fantastic.
yes. Yes. Please let us know. We will totally have you back.
Thank you. Sure, of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Are you ready to recap?
Yes. Jennifer, I love this book so much.
I liked it a lot too. It was
I
really good. I really was on pins and needles for a lot of it.
Oh, I was so like literally the last like I don't know, 150 to 200 pages, I was just going. I mean, it just was so riveting and I really I really came to care about these characters so much. And I'm not kidding when I say that I learned a lot about the history of Iran
Yeah.
and all of the like the power grabs and how that played into what was already starting to happen with modernization coming in and affecting things and people sort of reacting to whoa things are changing too fast, hold on,
Yeah.
let's go, let's pull back. And I just think that's such a you know, it's funny because I've never really been that much of a historical fiction person, but reading this book, Afarin's book, Silence Whispers, reading this really gave me an appreciation for a really good story that's very well written and well told, couched in historical events.
Agreed.
And yeah, so I think I have a new appreciation for historical fiction now, and it's because of this book.
Done well.
Yeah, yes,
Historical
done
fiction
well.
done well.
Exactly.
I think it didn't hurt that we read the book What Iranians Want before we read this book, because
Absolutely.
I think it helped tie history, for me at least.
Yeah.
And also, I also think that, okay, so this was the nonfiction, this is fiction. And that statement that we've said so many times, this one really made the political personal,
Yeah.
or the personal political. I think I said that backwards, which is normal for me.
It works either way.
But because we're so invested in Gohar's story in the context of what's going on politically, the
Yeah.
things that are happening around her, culture, the things of tradition, the things of desire, we're so invested in it. We're so invested with the Russians coming in, the
Yeah.
Germans, the English, like all of this is like, wow, this affects a person
Yeah.
in her life and what she's capable and able to do.
Yeah, it humanizes political regime focused history.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that the idea of using this book in a book club with actual questions is amazing, because there was a point, there was another something I wanted to read in here. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on one second. You know, I can't read without my glasses.
And yet you never have them with you.
But, okay, because there's a couple things.
Okay.
On page 113, see if I can find that real quick. There's a sort of a discussion about, let me see if I can find that. I just think these are some things that we could talk about and have a little bit more understanding and more compassion. We
Right.
talked about Gohar's love interest.
Aslan?
Yeah. Aslan, like the lion, right?
I think so.
So he's talking to Gohar about her wearing a head covering or hair covering.
The chador.
The chador. And she says, you don't like head coverings, do you? And he says, no, it's insulting to insinuate that the mere sight of a woman's hair could make me behave like an animal. Men who force women to wear the veil are weak. Like children, they can't control their impulses. He paused, and then it goes on.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
my point is, that's a really great discussion item, because some people feel really compelled to wear it, and other people feel compelled not to. And then
Right.
I never really considered a man's perspective
Mm.
other than the traditional view that a woman should be covered.
Mhm.
Never really considered the view of a man who would say, oh, that's insulting that you're saying that I have no self-control
Ah,
or
yep.
no. And so I thought, well, that's a really unique perspective on that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that I think would be a great book topic
Absolutely.
to discuss, especially in the United States where we have such a limited view of what that's all about. Like we don't
Yeah.
really have any sort of real understanding.
Yeah.
And then there was another one. This one is, shoot, I wish I would have marked it. I thought I marked it read. Well, I'll just talk about what it was about. So not to give anything totally away, but perhaps one of our characters ends up with a child and not necessarily a man to protect her. And the thoughts of what do I do in this culture where I can't get a job? I don't have money of my own. Actually, she did have money of her own, but without a man, the
Yeah.
money doesn't really belong to her. And then how do I protect my children?
Yeah.
Another
Mhm.
great topic for a book club. Another thing that also happens in the United States, we just don't see it in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great topics. And I
Mhm.
really think that we have a tendency in the United States to say, oh, these things happen out there.
Yeah.
And they're
They happen
happen.
right here.
That's my point, is maybe they're not, maybe we don't see them as clearly because we're swimming in this water, right?
Mhm.
We're
Mhm.
not swimming in the same water. So we see it as something different when it
Yeah.
really isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it really isn't different. When we talk about this whole series we're talking about doing with the Christian fundamentalists that's coming
Yeah.
up on the podcast, when we
Mhm.
talk about how women are treated and even the daughters, stay-at-home daughters,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the same thing. Stay
Yeah.
at home until you're married. Stay at home till we tell you who you're going to marry. Don't go
Mhm.
to college. Don't get an education. Your job is to be in the home and raise children.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. Fundamentalism is fundamentalism is fundamentalism,
And I think
regardless of where it is.
that's why using this book in context with other books to have discussions about, it's easy to point our fingers, but
Mhm.
let's kind of look inside what's going on here.
Yep.
And I could see, well, we know Trump is saying out loud right now that that's exactly where he wants to bring the country to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Abortion rights gone, birth
Contraception gone.
women's rights gone, women belong to men.
Being able to vote gone. Being able to get a divorce gone. Being able to like read whatever you want gone.
Right. So let's not pretend that we're not sitting at a near
We're sitting at a
crisis
crossroads.
situation.
Yeah, we are sitting at a crossroads right now.
Right.
And it's not that dissimilar from the crossroads that the characters in Silenced Whispers are sitting at in
That's
this
the
book.
point. That's the
And
point.
and honestly, and I want people to take away from this conversation that okay, so it's about people in Iran. It's about turn of the century or turn of the 20th century Iran. Read the book.
Hello,
You
it's
can
here
you
today.
can relate to the book. I mean, you can relate to these characters. They're still people. They're still reeling from like major changes happening very quickly. It's all human. We can still relate to it.
Can I say something really probably shouldn't say?
Sure, go ahead.
White women need to get this in their book club. We need to have white women book clubs where we are studying this book and others like it,
Yes.
because we can, white women, think about your vote. Really, like, think
Yeah.
about your vote. I know I shouldn't have said it.
No, it's look, that is one of the reasons why we have the show, so that we have a platform to use our voice and to shine a light on other people and to encourage people to have the discussions and the hard conversations.
So we can all wear whatever we want to wear, whether it's a mini skirt or not.
Or a head covering or whatever you want to wear. It should be up
Right.
to you.
Including birth control.
Yeah.
You want to
freedom.
wear birth control? Wear it.
You want to wear freedom. Gohar was fighting for her freedom and the freedom of her country. We should be doing the same
We're not
thing.
much different.
We really are not. Such a good book. Everybody, please read the book. Share the episode with everyone and read the book. It's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
so
cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Bye, Jennifer.
Bye, Raquel.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.